This ain't the show your uncle's heard of.
But it's probably the one he'd respect if he didn't. Welcome to Killkit, the newest series from the Southern Collective Hunting Podcast.
We're not here to hype up the latest gadgets or talk about the gear we've never put through the ringer.
This is field-tested,
Hunter-proven.
the kind of gear that actually makes it into the woods and not just your shopping cart. We're talking saddles, optics, arrows, boots.
Every piece of kit that helps get it done. When the pressure's high and the stakes are real. You won't find us at the top of the charts, but you better hope you don't find us at your gate.
No fluff, no filler, just the gear that works and the stories that prove it. This is the Southern Collective, the underground voice of the die-hard Southern hunter. If you're here, you're one of us. Welcome to the fire. All right, welcome to the fire, Greg Staggs. Man, it's good to have you on the show today, buddy.
Man, I'm honored. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I feel like you were born for such a time as this, for this podcast series, man. I know you're a gear nut, and it's kind of a driving thing for you. You're one of those guys. We were cut from a different cloth when it comes to hunting gear. You love to try new stuff and to try different things, and I know that's a thing that a lot of people know about you, and I'm not that guy. And so I think we're going to have a great conversation today, man.
Yeah, I do too, man. I do too.
So just diving in just right from the gate, dude, you've been a writer for a while. I've seen your name for a long time. Talk about that and kind of how you got started in the outdoor industry.
Yeah, so the writing is actually what got me involved. So a lot of people don't know, so my undergrad degree is in journalism. I used to write a sports column, and then about that time that I was getting really immersed in the world of journalism is when I started deer hunting. You know, I grew up in the very southern part of Missouri. We locals called it the Boot Heel. It's the part of Missouri that sticks down into Arkansas. And, you know, if you drew a line all the way across Missouri, I should have been in Arkansas, but because of that little part of the Missouri that sticks down and we call the Boot Heel, that's where I grew up. And it didn't have deer. I grew up rabbit hunting and, you know, rabbit hunting, fishing, frogging, things like that. I mean, I stayed in the outdoors, but we didn't have deer. Well, about the time that I started writing a whole bunch in college through journalism for the school paper and things like that is when I picked up deer hunting, by necessity, because I was the first person to ever take a college class in my family. I mean, we didn't come from a wealthy family. You know, my dad worked at a factory for 37 years. I mean, there were years that I don't even know if the man saw the sunshine because he'd work overtime on Saturday and Sunday and be gone from sun up to sundown. And but you know, when he'd get a weekend off, we'd be out in the woods chasing something, right? Frogging at nighttime, things like that. But because of growing up from that sort of semi-poor background, when I got to college and we were not prepared to send me to college, it was kind of just a fluke thing. I was sitting around, I didn't know what to do. Hardee's had called a couple times, and that was my best job offer on the table at the time, was to go to work at Hardee's. And people are going to laugh at that, and that's a reality. I didn't want to go to work at Hardee's for a career. So I was sitting around, and I'm like, man, some of my friends that went to college, I'll give it a try. I mean, I'm not that much dumber than they are. and that was really the thought process behind, you know, people make all these, you know, they go visit, you know, schools and they do all these, you know, tours and all this stuff. That was literally my thought process of going to college. But, you know, I was taking out student loans. I was getting in debt. We didn't have a lot of extra funding for it. And so I was kicking up rabbits and squirrels and stuff to help supplement the grocery bill. And I walked into Walmart one night really late. I was just killing time as a college freshman, sophomore there. And I picked up a wildlife code handbook, and I took it home and I started flipping through it. And I was looking at things I could hunt in northeast Arkansas, and I came across deer. I'm like, oh, that's right. They do have deer here where I chose to go to college. And I went back a couple nights later, bought a used bow. And they don't have used bows at Walmart, but someone had finagled a return that, you know, and returned a used rusted bow of bear whitetail hunter that was obviously used. The strings were frayed. It did not fit me, nothing. But I'm like, man, if I could kill a deer, that would feed me for a long time. So I just started going deer hunting. And of course, being poor, not knowing wealthy people, not knowing landowners. I mean, not really. I was very much an introvert, so I didn't really know how to go knock on doors and ask permission. So I just dove into the world of public land hunting. And with a bow specifically. And it didn't take long to figure out that, man, if I'm going to have any chance of success at all, I need to hunt elevated. I bought my first climber. It was a steel V-bar climber, and that started the whole thing of mobile public land deer hunting. And it was about the time I was really getting wrapped up in writing, and I started just kind of documenting some of the stuff and writing, and got about the time the internet exploded was when I joined some of the bow hunting forums, and it finally took a few years, but I started kind of mastering my craft a little bit, and being I was one of the few people, because of my wordsmithing ability and ability to paint a picture of what I was going through and experiencing myself. At that time, there was no pro staff and all that, so that was a new concept. So I had manufacturers start reaching out to me. Muzzy, the owner Michelle Masaccia at the time, who later became Michelle Eichler, Fred's wife. She reached out to me and personally invited me to come on board Muzzy. Will from the Will Waller from the Summit family. His dad, some of you old guys may remember the lab coat guy commercials, where his dad would be, in a white lab coat, and they'd be touring through the Summit facility in Decatur, Alabama. I got to do that and tour the family. They personally invited me to come on. So I started getting these relationships where people would go, man, there aren't a lot of people at the time. Now everyone can pretty much express themselves coherently and well on the internet. But back then, there weren't a lot of guys that were like, man, this is kind of an semi-educated guy who can express himself coherently, who can form a cohesive thought and represent a product. And so I started getting all these relationships going, and it was through the writing online primarily.
Wow, that's a cool time to be alive. I know you're a little older than I am, but I feel like I got in by the skin of my teeth
Right.
into the YouTube game. Was doing it a little bit before most people.
Yep.
But right before it just kind of everybody had a YouTube channel. So you're kind of the same in the writing game.
Yeah.
Now, did you get bonus points because you were from Southern Missouri and you could write coherently?
You would think so, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's like when you talk to. It is funny, but because readers are going to pick up. Believe it or not, I've lost probably 3/4 of my accent. Right? I can drop down in fact, with my sales territory, with my real world job. Right? I cover Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, as the whole Midwest. I go down to Arkansas and I start talking to Arkansans again. Man, I can slip back. It can get really exaggerated, just like I grew up, very quickly. And because that's my natural accent, but for the most part, I've lost probably half to 3/4 of it. And it's funny that you say that, because a lot of people, if they don't know where I'm from, if they don't hear me talk, they just read my words. They think, oh my God, this guy is like highly educated. And you can play it up or play it down, however you need to, right, in a story or in any conversation. But people would read my writing, and then it's funny when the YouTube channel did start, and I did kind of gravitate over to that, where people are like, oh my God, boy, where are you from? Like they didn't expect that.
Yeah. Yeah. I get the same. I have the same effect, Greg. Whenever people see me, they're like, "You're a lot shorter than I expected."
Yeah.
It's one of the. It's funny.
Yeah.
But no, you're doing YouTube as well now, and that's really what I want to dive more into. But I know your roots are in writing and things like that. But I want to kind of dive into one of the topics with the Killkit series that we haven't really discussed much, and that's climbing methods.
Right.
And this is something that when I was referencing earlier that I'm not a gear nut, my climbing method is a huge part of that. Like, I don't change it much. Not the method. Now, I might change the sticks. Tethered comes out with new sticks.
Yeah.
Whatever. Might change the aider that I use every once in a while. But for the most part, I'm taking 3 sticks every single time I go in the woods, and I'm using a movable backwoods mobile gear 3-step aider with my tethered 1 sticks. And I've been doing some variation of that since Hawk Heliums.
Yeah.
Right? Like some type of variation. It used to be a DIY, one of those little it was like a 5-step aider with garden hose. I had garden hose electrical taped around the steps,
Yeah.
So that's all I've really ever done. But man, fellas like yourself have really been pushing this 1-stick method. Pretty hard.
Yeah. So I actually contemplated, and I know we were kind of both in were frantic trying to get ready for this thing with me with some work things and other things. I actually contemplated putting my shirt on that says 4 sticks is equals 3 sticks too many, right? Just wearing it for the podcast. But it's kind of, I actually said it as a joke one time, and then people started picking up on it and repeating it and everything. I'm like, I'm going to make a shirt about that. So I was actually scrolling through some Instagram reels, and I came across some guy wearing that shirt that he had ordered it off my website. I didn't even realize it, so that was pretty cool. So,
And it says 4 sticks equals 3 sticks too many.
that is exactly what it says. Yeah,
I like it.
yeah,
I like it.
And we'll get into why. And listen, we'll preface this whole thing and forward it by saying, you got to find whatever kit works for you, right? I have ran the gamut. I went from wild edge steps to I've used just about every major step out there. With the exception of a few, and it just, I don't know, sometimes there's things that just doesn't appeal to me, and I just don't try them. But the great thing about it is I'm at a point where, like a lot of us are in life, that if something just doesn't really like catch my fancy and I don't want to try it, I don't have to, But I have tried a bunch of stuff, and so yeah, about the only things that I really haven't tried from a climbing ascending methodology is probably SRT and DRT. There's some guys out there who love rope climbing, and I hunt a lot of areas where I keep it in the back of my mind because I am such a prolific one sticker, and a lot of my one sticking brethren, if you will, people that are like, man, they ask me that question all the time. They're like, do you leave a rope? Do you leave your rappel rope in the tree and SRT back up it? And I'm like, no, there's a couple reasons I don't, but I get that question so much, I'm constantly thinking about it. And like, I was in a bedding area last fall, and I'm looking around the nearest limb on a tree, because it was kind of a young growth forested area, and the trees that were growing there didn't have limbs on them until, I don't know, they were 60, 70 foot high. I'm like, I'd hate to try to sneak into this bedding area and somehow throw a throw ball over a limb 70 foot up. And I mean, it just wasn't conducive to that. And I'm like, the great thing about one sticking is I can one stick up any tree. I can go up a telephone pole if I want to. It doesn't matter. Limbs are it doesn't matter. They're inconsequential to my climbing, whether it's got limbs, whether it's got too many. I can climb. I mean, if it's got too many, I'll just use the limbs to kind of step up and down and go up it. So yeah, I've done about everything and settled on, for me, and that was the point I think I started to say, you got to find what works for you. I'm not here. I've got a lot of experience with things, but I'm not going to push one sticking. I'm not going to push whatever. I'll answer questions, and yeah, I'll give you my personal experiences. But if people go, oh my God, there he is again, pushing one sticking again. No, if it works for you, I'll help you and answer a ton of questions, but I don't really care how you climb. I do think rappelling down, if I'm going to push anything, it's pushing rappelling down, because you mentioned that 5-step Etrier or that 5-step aider that was a lot of us did back in the early days when we were experimenting with all this mobile hunting and getting a lot as possible. And I mean, I got caught up in a 5-step aider one time, to the point where I was asking the Lord, I'm like, kind of making a deal with him, like, you get me down from this spot, I'll never use this aider again. and I did that. He got me down, and I sold it the very next day. And so if I'm going to push anything from a safety perspective, it is rappelling down. Whether you use 4 sticks, 5 sticks, whatever, I think rappelling down is well worth learning how to do.
Dude, and rappelling down looks like one of the funnest things you could possibly do.
It's so awesome.
In the woods. I've never done it, and I was going to. I kind of went back and forth on it. Like, here's what always my standard. Like, I try not to get on the trend of things with my climbing method, because or with anything in the mobile hunting game. I just, like, if it's not a sponsored product that I need to push from that perspective,
right,
I'm not just going to jump on a bandwagon just because a bunch of people or a few people say it's the way to go. Because for a while, SRT, DRT, those were all things that people were really pushing hard. But now here's what I'm seeing, Greg, and you've probably seen the same. Now I'm seeing, like, big guys doing one stick method. I'm seeing out of shape guys doing one stick method. I'm seeing young kids. I'm seeing, teenage girls doing one stick method. And I'm like, okay, But what I was saying is all these different methods have kind of trended from time to time. But I'm seeing people really using the one stick method efficiently, and I'm like, because my first thing is like, I just don't want to fiddle with something new and
Mhm.
it be like something that I'm going to find myself at 4 a.m. in the morning climbing up into a tree, and all of a sudden I'm SOL. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Oh,
And
100%.
but it's kind of seemed like it's kind of stood the test of time, you could say, with
Yeah.
this one stick method. A lot of people doing it. A lot of people are liking it. It's significant weight savings. I mean,
It, so that is a huge factor, significant weight savings. And just as much for me is it's the fact that I'm controlling my climbing method at all times. Whether if you use, especially if you use four sticks, but even if you use three, a lot of times, about the only good way to get up the tree with three or four sticks is to hang them off of your saddle, off the side of your hips. Right? You got to. It's almost like you're hanging revolvers or something. You got a left hip, a left stick, you got a right stick, and you got the one you're putting on the tree. And there is the propensity to have clanging or noise or bumping into something, or just they're just hanging there. And so if you hit a limb, if there's just a chance of noise a lot more. If I'm holding one 12-inch stick, that's all I've got. It cannot bump into anything unless I bump it into something, unless I am
mhm.
the one that does it. And so that's the only thing I'm using. And then I just climb up the aider, stand on top of it, reach down, grab it. So there's a point where when I'm climbing with my one stick, I'm not doing anything different. And I try to point this out. A lot of people gravitate toward my YouTube channel because I do a lot of teaching on one sticking, right? And I try to point that out, that up until the point where I'm standing on top of the stick after what we call our first move. The first time I put it on the tree at head high, I've got a two-step aider, but I can put my stick at head high. I climb up the aider, I move my tether up as high as I can. I'm standing on top of my stick after the first move. At that point, I still haven't done anything that you, as someone climbing three sticks or four sticks, haven't done. We all do that. We all start off the exact same way. And I try to make a big deal about that because people are like, oh my God, one sticking's so hard, and I make a joke about that in some of my videos. That, okay, at that point, all I'm doing, I allow myself to kind of ease into the tree. And some people will go to the side. There's a small percentage that do that. I like to go into the tree and basically let the tree go into my crotch area. I put my left leg on one side, my right leg on the other, and I reach down and undo the stick and pick it up and put it above my head. That's it. That's the only difference between one sticking and climbing with three or four sticks, is that move of where I actually go into the tree, hang, and a lot of times on my videos, I'm like, how hard is it to hang? I'm just hanging. I'm not
Yeah.
fighting gravity. I'm not exerting energy. One of my favorite sayings, I'm not burning calories. Literally, I'm just hanging. and
Yeah.
and and some of my more recent videos are like, I pretty much, with my job, I was on the road so much, I was eating out so much, everything. I put on way too much weight. I've lost 15 pounds now since January, and so I'm kind of getting more back into shape. But there are some of my more recent videos that it's obvious I was pretty well out of shape, and and I'm like, I'm just hanging, dude. I'm just hanging. And just hang and reach out and grab the stick and put it back up, and I step out so that I create an angle for my rope, because I use that rope to wedge the stick under and hold it for me. Now I'm hands free again. That's really the only thing that I do differently. So yeah, you don't have to be in a great shape. You don't have to be a great athlete. It's pretty simple.
Greg, do you pack deer out usually, or
So
are you a dragger?
I typically don't. I typically leave my kill kit at the car because, and I've written pretty extensively about this. I'm very blessed with my job and with the career choices that I've made. I pretty much work autonomously, and even though I work for large corporations most of the time, they let me treat what I do as my own business. Like if I succeed and the money I make is what is based on my own efforts and merits. So I have a lot of autonomy. So because of that, I get to go hunting a lot. And I structure my year around. I don't take a lot of vacation in June, July, August. I take my vacations in November and December, and I just structure my life that way. So I've pretty much for the last 23, 24, 25 years, somewhere through there, I pretty much go hunting. I put in 100 sits a year. Now that doesn't translate to 100 days a year, because a sit may be a sit in the morning, a sit in the evening, right? So that's 2 sits, and people go, "You hunt 100 days?" No, I put in 100 sits. So if I put in 100 sits, I don't want to take in 100 times a kill kit, a cart, a pack frame, whatever. I leave all that in the vehicle behind me. And then on average, I kill anywhere 5, 6, 7 deer a year is pretty much my average. 5 or 6 deer a year is my average. So if I'm hunting 100 times, if I'm putting 100 sits in, 100 hunts in, I kill 5 deer. We'll make the math easy. That's 95 times. I don't need a kill kit. So I'll leave all that at the vehicle behind me. And so when I do kill, that's when I go back. And typically 99% of the time, I drag them out with a cart.
Okay.
Even in pretty hilly country, I'll still take a cart. Now, if it's really bad area, a lot of times I will, if I know I'm hunting a bad area, I will throw a frame pack in the car with me. And when I go back, I'll get the frame pack.
Yeah.
But I don't take it in every time.
It's such a similar mindset, I think, with packing out deer. It's something that I push to a lot of people. Like, packing out's just easy.
Yeah.
It's so much easier. It's like you're literally choosing the hard way if you choose to drag one out these days, because you can find a frame pack for pretty affordable price.
Right.
You know, like it's not hard. And I categorize it the same as you do the one sticks. Is you're like, it's pointless. Like, it's pointless to carry those other 3 sticks or whatever in. Like, stop doing that, because it doesn't make sense at this point. Like,
right.
And so I get it. And I'm heard, right? Like, I'm hearing it. I'm very logical people in my life that I know well are like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why are you carrying all those sticks? It's just pride.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So where did you mentioned you started with a climber. When it came to, like, let's say mobile climbing sticks.
Yeah.
Where did you start?
So I'm trying to think of the first sticks I started. I mean, they were probably steel, like muddy pros, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I tell you what, I know exactly which sticks they were first. It was Lone Wolf. So when I transitioned from my steel V-bar climber, then there was a period of time where I used screw-in steps, and I used Cranford screw-in steps, and I think Cranford, I've heard that Cranford is going out of business now, and but Cranford had a patented design on their a very tapered design on their screw-in steps. And I learned it from a guy in Alabama, actually, a forestry professor in Auburn. And he showed me the Cranford screw-in steps. I used those for years. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, I've used screw-in steps, but if you use like a Maristep or something like that, they're very rounded, and a lot of times you have to use a starter kit or some kind of a leverage tool. I'm like, dude, you really need to get your hands on some Cranford, because Cranford steps are literally a 2-finger start in any tree. They're so much better than a normal screw-in step. So I'm sad to hear that they're going away, but there's a lot of reasons, right?
Sure.
They're not legal on all public land. They are a little bit more work intensive than just strapping on something on a tree and going on up, especially with what we can avail ourselves of now in the industry. But so for years, I went from that steel V-bar climber to screw-in Cranford steps and a little slight hang on. And then when I finally moved away from that, I went over to Lone Wolf Alpha. I had a Lone Wolf Alpha hang on and Lone Wolf four Lone Wolf sticks that were, the old Lone Wolf sticks. They were like 36 inches long. And so I used those for years. And then I that's about the time that Summit asked me to join their pro staff. I hunted with a Summit climber, the Cobra and the Viper for years. And I made the transition from that back to a Lone Wolf hand climber for probably 5 years or so. And from the Lone Wolf hand climber, that's when I kind of got into saddle hunting. I actually had a Lone Wolf climber platform break on me. It just snapped, and I'd never seen that happen before. And luckily, it snapped the very first time I put it on the ground at like 3 foot and stepped up onto it at 3 foot high. That's when it broke, and the actual metal gave way, not the belt. And so it was scary enough. And I'd had a friend at that point that just got in, probably a year prior, got into saddle hunting and was kind of telling me how safe it was, and you're always tied in, and it was less cumbersome, no creaky and everything. And the snapping of that lone wolf hand climber is what pushed me over the edge. And I'm like, okay, tell me more about this saddle hunting thing.
Yeah. So a start real similar to a lot of guys. Climber. Most Southern guys are going to be like, oh, I went from a climber to the mobile hunting saddle or tree stand or whatever. But yeah, I had a similar experience where a friend of mine had fallen from a tree stand, from a climber, because the climber just broke. It wasn't like, it wasn't anything that he did wrong. Like maybe the thing that he did wrong is he didn't have a harness on. He didn't have a safety harness on, but the climber just broke, and you can't ever say when that's going to happen to you.
Right.
Like it
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Yeah.
And the more you hunt, guys like us who are in the woods, 4 days a week, 5 days, sometimes every day of the week, your odds are just going up.
Right.
Every time. Right.
A lot of people may remember Todd Preenitz. He was a friend of mine. He, had the White Knuckle production series, WKP. He had actually done a lot of work for Lone Wolf. And so he was still alive at that time. And he messaged me. He goes, dude, send me, he was really concerned about that lone wolf. I'm like, dude, he's like, have you done this? He asked a million questions. I'm like, no, I've never banged it. I've never dropped it. It's never fallen from a tree. I don't throw it out, nothing. And it's just, but it was probably a 15 or 20-year-old lone wolf, but shouldn't have done it. And I'm, to your point, I think, the big safety benefit from saddle hunting is we are tied in at all times. I mean, I was probably guilty there of, I always hunted out of a harness, but I'm not going to say I always climbed with a harness. A lot of times I would have it on, but not have it attached until I got up to my hunting height, and then throw your tether rope up and tie in at the last second. Well, that if that hadn't broke at ground level, that could have been nasty.
And I believe most of the accidents that happen on the ascent or the descent.
Yep,
like
or transitioning
up or down.
Transitioning to a platform or off a platform.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's kind of your start, and like a lot of guys, a lot of guys start with Heliums, Lone Wolf.
Yep.
Pretty much what was available at the time. Muddy Pros. So now we talked about one sticking, kind of that's what you do. What's your actual one sticking setup, your go-to right now?
Yeah. So I went through a myriad of climbing methods and methodologies once I got into saddle hunting. Wild Edge steps, step with a 5-step aider, then back to little small mini climbing sticks. I went through a ton of sticks, and then when I got into one sticking, they didn't have a complete kit, a complete assembled thing. I ordered all my parts from Eastern Woods Outdoors, and it was basically what led to the Ultimate One Stick that a lot of people know from EWO. You can in fact, now you can go type in my name and it'll pull up the Ultimate One Stick, or at least the version that I use, which is a 12-inch angled front. But back then I was having to buy different parts. I bought a platform, I bought this, I bought the lower step, I bought that, I bought it all and put it together. But for the last 4 or 5 years, I ran the Ultimate One Stick from EWO. Like I said, when I started, it was a kit. Eventually, became a complete offering. And then I was very fortunate enough last year to be invited into a partnership or an affiliation, if you will, just to help out a little bit with a collaboration between Hunt Arsenal and EWO. And EWO had the pretty much the name recognition of one sticking, the expertise combined with all the input that I'd been giving them over the years and helping them kind of round out their portfolio. And then Hunt Arsenal with their cutting edge, really super light proprietary, with the platforms, and they can do some really cool things from a manufacturing standpoint. And they decided they wanted to test the waters a little bit with one sticking, but they didn't want to take it on. So they created this cool one stick, but then wanted to sell it or distribute it through EWO and let them manage that process. But Dano, a lot of people know Dano with EWO. I mean, he's bound to the shop a lot because he's running a very successful and a very busy business. And so I was fortunate enough to be the field product launch part of that, the testing part of that. So I got to test that product all year long. I was able to we would jump on the phone a lot of times through a Zoom call or a Teams call or something like that, and get a 3-way call going on video chat. And I'm like, okay, if you could change this, based on my last 5 or 6 hunts, can we tweak this? Can we tweak that? And we made several changes along the way throughout the year. And that product has went to pre-launch this summer and should come out in about July. That was actually the stick that I used all last year. And again, it's a collaboration between Hunt Arsenal and EWO and myself, I guess, from a product standpoint, testing standpoint.
Is that somewhere live where people can look at it right now?
Yeah, it is actually, and it is available for pre-order. It's on EWO's website, and if you like, again, you can literally just go type in my name on EWO's search bar, or type in Hunt Arsenal, or type in Solo Stick. Any of those will lead to that stick on EWO's. It's about a 14-ounce stick. I don't know. It might be a little heavier. I think it's just slightly. It's about 2 pounds but that's the platform, the stick, everything. I mean, the cam cleat, all that is coming in right at about 2 pounds. So it's a proprietary carbon tube stick. It's pretty cool.
Man, you talk about weight savings, man. Like you're talking, that changes a lot. I've walked into the woods with people using a one stick, and I'm like, man, screw you, because they I got my whole pack packed. And here's the thing, my stuff ain't heavy. I don't find myself sitting there like, God, I wish this pack was just lighter. Yeah. It's not heavy. No, it's not that big of a deal. But then I see these guys, and they look like they're going scouting. They don't look like they're going hunting.
100%.
They look like they got a stick hung on their pack to go hang trail cameras. Yeah, that's all it looks like.
Exactly. And that's a good point you bring up, Parker, because the real reason we got into one sticking at the time, my son, we were fortunate enough, we homeschooled both of my boys, so which meant they spent a lot of time with me, and they earned a lot of wildlife management credits, right? Going hunting with Dad. And so especially, I mean, both my boys are extremely competent hunters. My youngest has probably spent more time than my oldest with me. And he was the one that kind of started this whole dive down this rabbit hole, right? Because at the time he was using 4 Shakar by out on the limb sticks, and they're great sticks, right? But it was more so the fact that he was 12 and 13 years old. And so it wasn't like it was a ton of weight, but when he would get down and he was bringing down each stick with him. And again, you're keeping in mind, this is a 12 and a 13-year-old doing this, because he did this over a period of a couple of years, couple seasons. And he would come down, he would have to remove his platform. Then he would go down to the bottom, the next step, which is right there pretty much at the platform level. Then he's got to take that off the tree, and he's got to figure out, either drop it. Most times what he do is just drop it, right? And then you come down to the next step, and he's dropping it. Because he's using 4 sticks to get up to, he's 12 years old. He doesn't have a huge stride. And we didn't have aiders for him, because I wasn't super comfortable with that for being a 12, 13-year-old. And so by the time he gets down, he's got a platform on his back, or he's dropped that. He's dropped 4 sticks. He's got to pick them up. He's got to figure out how to, pack them all up and collate them, and then get them to nest together, and then put them on. So a lot of times what I was doing at that point, because I trusted him, and we would either hunt where he was in visual sight distance, or I was probably less than 200 yards away. And by the time I would get down, even with my sticks that I was hunting with at the time, and I would pack up, I would go, he would still be picking up his sticks at the bottom. It was more about efficiency than it was weight savings. And I was complaining about that to the same friend who got me into saddle hunting to begin with, when that lone wolf hand climber broke. And I was lamenting the fact and telling the woeful stories of, oh my God, we got to take 20 minutes for him to pack up at the end of every hunt. I could be back in the car now. I'm glad my boy's going with me, don't get me wrong, but oh my God, it takes forever to pack up at the end of the night. He's like, dude, you need to get in one sticking. I rappel down, wind up my rope, and I'm gone. And I'm like, okay. And I watched a couple of videos. I'll be honest with you. I watched a couple of videos because it was such in its infancy. There were only 2 or 3 videos on one sticking at the time on YouTube in the internet world. And I watched everything I could find. I'm like, that is the craziest, stupidest, most ludicrous thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I am on record as saying that looks like that is a crap show. There's no way I want to have anything. No, we're not doing that. And that friend came. I invited him to come hunt with me during the rut, and he brought his setup. He goes, I'm going to show your son how easy this is. And we went in the back, and it was literally him showing my boy. And that's where a lot of this whole craze started from. I grabbed a Handycam for like $200 that you buy, a Sony Handycam. I mean, it is the cheapest little camera that you can buy. And we walked out back behind my house, and I videoed him showing my son how to one stick. Not that we had any intention of me getting involved in it. I wanted to video it because I knew he was here visiting during the rut, and he was going to leave. And he wouldn't be around to show us details anymore and show us exactly what he's doing. So I wanted to video it so I could go back and watch to teach my son in case he had questions or we had. And so and that video became one sticking is so easy a 13-year-old can do it. That has, I don't know, 200,000 views or something on my YouTube channel now, and literally kind of spawned this whole movement, if you will, because I mean that video gets mentioned everywhere. But that video, it was literally just so I could, when my friend left, I'd have it as a reference point. But I was watching him teach my son. I'm like, okay, that's not what I watched before. That is way easier than the other videos made it seem. The other videos were, I mean, whether it just didn't convey or transfer well in video, could have been, maybe they weren't as good of teachers. I don't know. But when I watched my friend do it behind the house, I was like, oh, that's a piece of cake. You're just reaching down, grabbing the stick and putting it over your head. That's a no-brainer. And then when he rappelled down and just literally pulled his rope out of the tree and wound it up, and he goes, I'm ready to walk away and walk back to the car now. I'm like, oh, yeah. The next day, we both ordered everything we needed.
At a baseline, what does somebody need as far as like, so let's say somebody in my position using 3 sticks and an aider, what is needed to get started to one stick? Is this a total revamp of your whole system?
In a sense, yes. I mean, so it depends on how efficient, and do you want the equipment that makes it the easiest on you? You can take any existing stick and one stick with it, right? I mean, you can. Do you want to be the most efficient and have the easiest, most pleasant experience you can while you're one sticking, which I think is good to start off with, because if you want the full experience, it's hard to start off with equipment that you're making do and using that to evaluate whether this is something you want to transition to hunt out of, right? So I really recommend a stick that's kind of made for it, or that you can convert to it real easy. And one of the things, there are people that use sticks without a cam cleat. They use the Versa button that's on it or something. That's really hard to reach down and undo that, because you're reaching down and you can turn your head and look and see what you're doing, but you're not that you're working hard, but you're at a little bit of an awkward angle. It's most of us, myself included, we use a cam cleat that you just pull through and it locks the rope in. This goes around the tree that you're around the tree with, that the stick is held to. We reach down and you can just pull it out of the cam cleat. Once you remove the pressure from the stick, because once you set the stick, it's locked in. You're not going to pull it out so easy. But once you pull up and release the pressure off the stick where you stood on it, release that, then you can just pull that rope out real easy out of a cam cleat and then just grab it and pull it up with you. So I would really highly suggest using a stick with a cam cleat. I like having a little platform on it. There are people who use just a stick and then they hang a platform off separately. That pretty much dictates that every time you go hunting, you are going to have to grab a platform. There are times... Yeah,
it kind of defeats the purpose to me.
Yeah, it does. Now you're hanging two things. Also, what happens if you just want to grab it for a short hunt and you think, well, I'm just going to go for a short hunt. I'm not going to grab my platform. I'm going to stand on the top of my stick, which is very uncomfortable and leads into foot problems and other things that, that's a whole different rabbit hole. But I like at least having a very small platform on top, at least that, so that if you end up hunting longer than you thought you were, or you just don't have to, you can still hang a separate platform off to the side, but at least you've got one with you. And so I like an integrated stick platform combination. And then you need an aider, because where our gains come from, and I've been telling people I'm going to film this video for 3 years, and I'm going to do it this summer. Where your gains come from in one sticking is not the length of your stick. People ask me all the time, should I use a 12-inch stick, a 15-inch stick, an 18-inch stick? Your gains, your height, what I'm calling my gains, my height doesn't come from the length of your stick. It comes from the complete move you can make as in totality. And that is largely dependent upon having an aider. so I need a stick with an aider, 2 or 3 step aider, whatever it is. So you need a stick, preferably a stick with a platform, a cam cleat, and then an aider on that stick. That's what comprises a true one sticking setup. So that's your climbing apparatus. Then you need a rappel rope, and I use a 40-foot rappel rope, and people are like, oh my god, you're never going to hunt 40 foot high. And truthfully, you're right. I probably never will, but I have the option. You realize that going around the tree is taking up 3 or 4 foot probably. So now you're left with 36, 37 foot of rope, and I want to rappel down always and be the bottom of my rope touching the ground, so that when I can rappel all the way down safely. And if you're really competent and you have fun, people have seen me on videos and in demos. A lot of times I do the Navy SEAL bound thing. I'm like, whee, and it's a blast to do that. If you don't want to do that, if you're scared of heights, you don't feel comfortable with it, walk yourself down really super slow. It's still by far the safest way to get down a tree, because if you slip and fall, you're going 1.5 foot, and maybe you touch your nose on the tree. I mean, that's it. So I use a rappel rope. And the reason I use 40 foot is the difference between 40 foot and 30 foot is probably 2 ounces. I mean, it's seriously, if you weigh 10 foot of rope, 2-3 ounces at best. It doesn't take up any more space from a space standpoint and bulk standpoint in my duck pouch or my backpack. The difference between 30 foot and 40 foot is negligible. And so I hunt some big hills sometimes. I hunt the Shawnee National Forest and the Mark Twain National Forest in Missouri and Illinois, respectively. And there are times I need to be on the downwind side of a trail coming off a ridge. And both of those forests have hills that are so steep that if I'm on a downwind side of a trail, that I might be 15, 20 foot yards at best on the downwind side of a trail. But because it's so steep, to get up above line of sight, I'm using every bit of that 40 foot of rope. Mm-hmm. So that's why I carry it. It's like carrying a concealed weapon. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah. What about forgive me for my ignorance, but is it called like a Mad Rock?
Yep, Mad Rock Safeguard is what I typically use to rappel with as an ascender. The thing I love about a Mad Rock Safeguard, there's a variety, right? And I don't push one or the other. I've got my preference, and it's obviously a Mad Rock Safeguard. And I like it because it can be used as both an ascender and a descender, meaning I can climb with it. It takes up slack as I go up, and I always keep it taut. It's almost like, think of a Ropeman 1. Everyone's familiar with a Ropeman 1 or a Kong duck, right? Mm-hmm. Today in the saddle hunting world. It's an ascender. You take up slack with it, and with a Ropeman, you've got to like physically move it to you've got to lift up on that little lever that clamps. It's a rope clamp.
Yep.
Right? And you've got to lift up on the clamp portion of the Ropeman 1 or a Kong duck to get it to feed out. Well, but it acts as an ascender primarily. And so a Mad Rock Safeguard acts as an ascender in the exact same method. You take up rope, it stops afterwards. Then it's got a handle. So I ascend with my Mad Rock Safeguard. I hunt off of it. I can maneuver, I can do a 360, shoot offside, weak side shot, drop shot, whatever way you want to go. I can do anything I want to with it hunting off of it. But then when I get ready to pack up and rappel down, I literally reach down, grab my stick, put it on the back of my backpack, and then I grab the handle, and I can just walk myself. I can either, like I said, I control my descent with the force of the handle I pull, and then it becomes a descender. And so, I love the Mad Rock Safeguard. You can buy a $10 figure 8 from Petzl or REI or some of the mountaineering sites, right? And you can walk yourself down, and if you use an auto block, which is basically nothing more than a backup kind of a system that ensures that if you let too much rope through, it catches you. But you can descend just as well with a $10 figure 8, just as easily, really well. That's what a lot of Army personnel, air assault kind of guys will what firemen in rescue situations, that a lot of them use figure 8s and things like that. The difference is it's hard to ascend. It's hard to climb with a figure 8. So, and I like the Mad Rock Safeguard in the fact that I never have to switch out devices. I don't have to climb with one methodology, switch to something or lock off or something, and then figure out another way to switch to something that I can descend with. That's why I use a Mad Rock safeguard. I go up, hunt, come down with the same device. I never untied. I never switching out during the hunt.
And it's just that's what keeps you. It's in place of the Kong duck or the ropeman.
Yep.
You would use it for all those steps.
Yep.
Man, dude, that is something. It sounds like I feel foolish sometimes when I see guys doing that, and then hearing you talk about it. And the other thing is knowing that I put myself in this position on my own, to be sitting here thinking about, okay, yeah, it's probably time. It's probably time. Now let's talk about. We talked a little bit more about tree stands in this series, just because we're trying to cover bases.
Yeah.
And we had a great episode with Cody DeQuisto. Is the one stick method something that can be used with a tree stand as well?
You can. And I actually just, speaking of Cody, so I've got some friends on that side of, Lone Wolf Custom Gear and things like that. They actually, we were chatting earlier in the summer, and one guy kind of asked me, he's like, have you ever wanted to try out any of our gear? Because they know who I am and what I do. And I'm like, man, I would be extremely interested in that Ranger hybrid. So they actually sent me one to try. Been playing around with it a lot, and what's not a true tree stand, but very, very close, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually going to do a video this summer on that, about one sticking and climbing platforms, one sticking platforms. So I'm going to go through the whole, climbing with just a stick with no platform, maybe putting out a ring of steps, all the way to ending with the Ranger hybrid. But yeah, I've got some friends who go with complete tree stands, and usually they're the 0.5s or 0.75s or things like that, because there's no sense pulling up like a Summit Copperhead or the huge unwieldy ones. That's kind of out of the discussion anymore. But yeah, I am actually planning on hunting with a Ranger hybrid some this year, and especially there's so many things I like about that stand, because it doesn't have cables that come down. That as a saddle hunter, I can walk myself all the way around the edge. There's no cables to interfere with that. The seat can flip down, and I can use it as a knee pad up against the tree, or I can flip it back up the other way and turn around, sit on it as a traditional tree stand hunter. When I mean, you and I, and there's a lot of us that have been saddle hunting now for over 5, 6, 7 years, and while it's got so many pros to it, there are some cons that, man, you just get tired sometimes. You would love a chance to just sit down. And I'm not going to say that saddle hunting's perfect. There's always gives and takes in everything. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that on some longer sits going in, or, something where I think it might not be just a quick in and out kill. I'm going to take that thing with me, and I'll saddle hunt mostly, but God, it's going to be nice to know that I can flip that little seat down, turn around, and just sit down.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, I'm playing.
That's awesome. That's cool, and I've heard that from plenty of people. I've heard that from a lot of people. Just like it's not, saddle hunting's not bulletproof. Tree stand hunting's obviously not bulletproof. They've all got use cases, I think. And I will say I guess I'll ask: is there any situations where you're like, man, the one stick method is just not it?
So there's two cases. One, I haven't experienced myself, but I've heard people in the deep south that are around pine trees that have all of the sappy stuff. I don't have to hunt that environment, right? So I never chime in on those arguments. If you ever see anyone in a one sticking forum or a one sticking discussion, and they're talking about, hey, how do you keep the sap off your rope? How do you clean your rope with sap? Or are you one sticking in? You'll never see me join that discussion. I have no expertise in it. So that is an area that I could see could be problematic. The other thing I have done, part 2 of this, is climbing wet trees, and I've done it plenty. And climbing wet trees while you're one sticking is no fun. I'll just, if someone is going, oh, Greg says one sticking is perfect all the time. 99% of the time it is. I mean, I can climb leaning trees. I can climb no-limb trees. I can climb multi-limb trees. I can climb almost anything. Shaggy bark hickories I've one-sticked up and down. I mean, I went up almost everything. Locust, I've one-sticked up locust trees, those ones with those big thorns, like if you picture Jesus's crown that, they subjected him to. I've climbed up those, only knowing because I did it because I knew I was going to rappel down. That's the only reason I did it. But I've went up almost every scenario you can think of. One sticking up wet trees sucks.
What is it? Is it just this? Is it
It's
the rope slip or?
it's not the rope. It's when, for me personally, it's when I go in and allow myself to go into the tree, right, and I turn around and reach down and grab my stick. Here's where it becomes problematic. I bring my stick up, and then I like to push off the tree with my feet and push off and create that angle that was right here. My rappel rope, my tether, they're both the same, right? My tether and my rappel rope is right here in front of me. I like to push off and gain that angle, gain that whatever, that's what I'm going to use to put my stick up and wedge my stick up. It's super easy when it's dry. I don't care what tree you're climbing. If it's not raining, that is so simple. And I tell people, I was like, how hard is this? I push off from the tree and put my stick there. So simple. When the tree and bark in front of you is soppy wet and water's running down it, and a lot of times you're trying to climb and push up it goes almost back to climbing up on an aider is more problematic in and of itself. But then that part of pushing off and putting your stick up there, that becomes more problematic. It just, the whole thing becomes compounded in difficulty 100 times. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But also hunting in the rain sucks anyway.
It does.
So
it does. And I'm getting to where, I've got so many years of enjoyment. It's almost, I don't do this out of necessity anymore. But remember we started about the start of my story? I did it out of, like, I was trying to fill the freezer. I was trying to cut down the grocery bill. It was by necessity is why I picked up bow hunting. It was more of a need than a want. Well, I'm very blessed that it's not a need anymore. It is a need from a guttural standpoint of a guy. It's in my blood.
It's a need. Yeah, I got
you. Need, but I can delay that need a day or two until it stops raining now. Yeah.
Man, I'll tell you, Greg, I know you're a turkey hunter. This past spring's been a tough one when it comes to hunting turkeys in the rain.
Yeah.
Screw that. I'm like so done hunting turkeys in the freaking rain.
We had a wet spring here in Missouri too.
Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I really wanted to cover that last part of, what are the negatives? We tried to cover all the bases and let people know maybe what they're looking at as far as some challenges that might come. But dude, I feel like we've covered a lot in this last hour or so. Greg, man, where can I know you put out content all over the place, literally, like all different methods. If you can, just give us a quick rundown of where people can find your stuff at.
Yeah, I think probably the best format to find me on and that would help people the most from an educational standpoint is our YouTube channel, right? And it's Staggs in the Wild. I spend a lot of time on the road with work, and a lot of times I will test what algorithms, what search engines work. You can type in Staggs with 2 G's, with 1 G, Staggs in the Wild, it all pulls my channel up, which I'm very thankful for. We've built a big enough presence that'll do that. So Staggs in the Wild on YouTube, on Instagram. I rarely get on Instagram, but it's Bowhunter, BOHUNTR. I do check messages all the time. So if you're just an Instagram guy and you want to send me a message through Instagram, I do get those. And I'm on Facebook as just Greg Staggs.
Excellent. Guys, go check out Greg's stuff. If you're a gear nut, if that's you, you're gonna love Staggs in the Wild YouTube channel. One thing, Greg, just real quick before we get off, one of the things that I've liked about your stuff over the years is that you've really you cover a broad range of brands and different companies and the new things that come out. A lot of first looks, some first looks. And initial thoughts, some full out reviews, all over the mobile hunting space. So, no doubt guys will get a lot out of that channel and have been, getting a lot out of it. So appreciate what you bring to the space, dude. And, man, I'm excited about this podcast. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, man. I've enjoyed being on.